The first thing I noticed in Berlin wasn't the language or the buildings. It was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind either. The kind that settles in after midnight when you're alone in a room that doesn't know your name. My company put me in a small furnished apartment in Charlottenburg. Clean gray walls, a couch that felt like it belonged in a waiting room, and windows that sealed tight like they were designed to keep the world out. When I set my suitcase down, the wheels stopped rattling and the silence hit me full in the chest. Back home in Toledo, even at night, there was always something: an old furnace clicking, a dog barking 2 houses down, a passing truck on I-475. Here I heard my own breathing. I heard the refrigerator hum like a patient on a monitor. The next day I started working US hours, which meant my morning was everyone else's evening. I sat at a little desk by the window with a mug of bitter coffee and a spreadsheet full of shipping lanes and container numbers. The job was exactly what I'd been good at for 35 years, untangling chaos without raising my voice. Some people love logistics because it's puzzles and pressure. Me, I loved it because it made sense. You can't talk your way out of a missing container. You find the gap. You follow the paper. You fix what's broken. I told myself my marriage could be handled the same way. That lasted about 4 days. On the 5th night, I walked down the block to a grocery store because I'd eaten too many frozen meals, and my stomach was starting to feel like it was lined with cardboard. I found a place that reminded me of a Kroger if Kroger was quieter, and everyone moved like they had somewhere important to be. I stood in front of a row of yogurt cups, squinting at words that might as well have been printed underwater. A woman next to me, older, silver hair, sensible shoes, watched me struggle for a moment, then pointed at one cup and said something in German I didn't understand. She smiled anyway. "Thank you," I said, because it was the only thing I could offer. I walked back to my apartment with a bag that I hoped contained normal food and not somehow pickled fish. The air smelled like rain and diesel. A train rumbled somewhere underground. For a second, I felt almost steady. Then my phone buzzed. Sharon. I stared at her name like it was a warning label. When I answered, her face filled the screen, hair-done lipstick, perfect, the house behind her, looking warmer than it had any right to. "Well," she said, dragging the word out. "Look at you, Mr. International." "It's work," I said. She laughed. "Sure. Midlife crisis with a passport." I didn't react. I'd learned a long time ago that if I gave her a spark, she'd build a fire. "I need you to sign something," she continued, tone shifting like she was flipping a switch. "What is it?" "Just paperwork," she said. "For a little project. Don't make it into a whole thing." "What project?" She rolled her eyes. "Frank, not everything is your business." I almost said, "We're married. It is my business," but I held it. "Email it," I said. "I'll look." Sharon's smile turned sharp. "Just sign it when it comes. Don't start acting like my father." Then she leaned closer to the camera and lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. "I had people over last night," she said. The house felt alive again. Something cold slid through me. "What people?" I asked. She shrugged. "Friends, neighbors, people who aren't boring." In the background, I caught a flash of movement, someone walking past the doorway, laughing. In my house. The call ended, and I sat staring at my own reflection in the black phone screen. For a long minute, all I heard was my heartbeat and the faint, distant rush of the city outside. I told myself not to spiral. Don't assume. Don't react. Logistics rule number 1, don't panic until you have data. So I checked the data. I opened our banking app expecting maybe a few grocery runs or a dinner out. Instead, I saw a new couch purchase. A big one. Then a charge at a boutique home store I didn't recognize. Then a hotel booking. Then the one that made my mouth go dry, a withdrawal large enough that the numbers looked wrong at first glance. I blinked and read it again. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could almost hear Earl's voice from that BBQ. "You want me to say something?" I didn't call Sharon, not yet. I called Earl. He picked up on the second ring. "Frank." "You got a minute?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Always." I told him about the call, about the people in my house, about the money. Earl exhaled slow. "You want me to drive by?" he asked. "No," I said quickly, then softer, "Maybe. I don't know." "Frank," Earl said, and his voice had that union floor calm, the kind you trust in a crisis. "You gotta protect yourself. You hear me?"
I hear you. After I hung up, I sat at my desk and looked around the apartment that didn't feel like mine. My chest ached in that dull, tight way. I thought about Toledo, my old Jeep in the driveway, the smell of coffee at the diner on Reynolds Road, the way the air felt on summer evenings when the sun dipped behind the trees. I'd left for dignity. I didn't expect to feel this hollow. 2 days later, an email hit my work inbox with a subject line that sounded like it belonged in a courtroom. Compliance request, signature verification needed. I opened it, and the words on the screen made the blood drain out of my face. They were asking me to confirm whether I had signed a set of authorization documents tied to a financial disclosure at my home address in Ohio, documents carrying a signature that looked like mine. Only I didn't remember signing a thing. And deep down, I already knew why. My phone rang at 3:07 a.m. Not the soft little buzz it gives when Sharon wants something. This was a hard ring, sharp, insistent, like bad news doesn't care what time it is. I fumbled for it in the dark. My throat was dry. The apartment was cold in that strange way Berlin apartments get at night, sealed up tight like a jar. Outside the street was empty, no crickets, no distant freeway. Just the low hum of a city that never fully sleeps. I looked at the screen.
Unknown number. For a second, I almost let it go. Then my work email flashed in my mind. Compliance request signature verification needed. I answered. Hello. A woman's voice came through, calm but careful. Mr. Hargrove. This is Frank. My name is Marissa Velez. I'm a paralegal with a firm in Ohio. I'm sorry to call so late. My file says you're currently in Berlin. I sat up, the blanket sliding to my waist. My heart picked up speed. What's this about? There was a pause, like she was choosing words that wouldn't get her sued. I need to ask you a direct question, sir. Have you granted your wife, Sharon Hargrove, power of attorney? The room seemed to tilt. I pressed my palm to my forehead. No, I said. Absolutely not. Another pause, this one longer. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you, that helps. Helps who? I asked. My voice sounded louder than I meant it to in that tiny apartment. Marissa, what is going on? I'm not an attorney, she said, steady, so I can't advise you. But I can tell you why I'm calling. Your wife has submitted documents to a lender that reference an authorization power of attorney, and they're attached to a loan application. A cold wave rolled through my stomach. A loan, I repeated. Yes, sir. A business loan, she said. The application ties the financing to your marital home address in Toledo, and it references your income history. My jaw tightened so hard my teeth hurt. What business? Marissa hesitated, then said, a small importing company. Boutique scale, according to the materials. It mentions leveraging Mr. Hargrove's logistics network and industry relationships. For a second, I couldn't speak. It wasn't just money. It wasn't even the house. It was my name, my reputation, my work. The one thing I'd built with my own hands in decades of doing the right thing, even when nobody clapped for it. So she's using my career like a coupon, I said, and the bitterness surprised me. Marissa didn't react to the tone. She stayed professional. Mr. Hargrove, I don't know your marriage and I'm not here to judge. I just needed to verify whether you knowingly authorized these documents. I didn't, I said. My voice shook now. I didn't sign anything. Understood, she said. I'll make a note in the file. Wait, I said quickly. Who's the lender? What firm are you with? Why are you involved? I work for an attorney who's reviewing the documentation for a related matter, she said, guarded. I can provide the firm name, but I can't send you anything without proper authorization. I blew out a breath that tasted like panic. In my head, I could already see Sharon's face on that video call, smirking, calling it a little project. I could hear her voice in my kitchen. You'll come crawling back. Marissa, I said, forcing myself to slow down. Do you think the signature is forged? I can't make that claim, she replied. But I can say, the signature does not look consistent with the example provided in the lender's records. That's why questions are being asked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed once and then disappeared. I wanted to throw the phone. I wanted to book a flight right then and there. I wanted to storm into my own house and rip every piece of paper out of Sharon's hands. Instead, I did what I've always done when the world stops making sense. I asked for the facts. Can you email me your firm's contact information, I asked. Yes, Marissa said. To the address you're calling from. That's fine. Okay, she said. And Mr. Hargrove, I'm sorry, I know this is a lot. The call ended. I sat there in the dark holding the phone like it weighed 50 pounds. There's a kind of anger that's hot and loud. The kind you see in movies where a man smashes a lamp and screams into the night. This wasn't that. This was cold anger. The kind that makes your vision narrow and your thoughts turn sharp. I got up and walked to the window. Berlin's streetlights cast pale lines across the sidewalk. A bus hissed to a stop somewhere, doors opening and closing like a sigh. I could smell rain through the cracked seal of the window frame. I thought about Sharon in my house. My couch, my kitchen, my bills, my name laughing with people while she tried to build a life on top of a lie. Then I thought about what would happen if that lie became official. In logistics, if one document is wrong, the whole shipment can get held. If you ignore it, you don't just lose money, you lose trust. And trust is the hardest thing to get back once it's gone. I didn't fall back asleep. I didn't even try. When my workday started later, I moved through meetings like I was underwater. I answered questions about ports and transit times. I fixed a customs issue with a supplier in Michigan. My hands did the work automatically, but my mind stayed in Toledo at my kitchen counter hearing Sharon's voice. At noon Berlin time, I stepped out of the office and called Rick Lawson, an American expat I'd been working with on the ground. Rick was in his early 50s, sharp as a tack, divorced twice, and allergic to excuses. He answered with his usual blunt greeting. "You alive, Frank?" "Barely," I said. I told him about the compliance email, and about the bank alerts, and then about the 3 a.m. call. Rick didn't make sympathetic noises. He just listened. When I finished, he said, "She's playing chicken with your life. I keep thinking there's a misunderstanding," I admitted, "that maybe she's just..." Frank Rick cut in not unkindly. "I've been married to 2 women who could smile while they picked your pocket. This ain't a misunderstanding. This is a plan." My stomach clenched. If I stop it now, she's done. "Then she should have thought about that," Rick said. "But here's the thing. If you don't stop it, you might be done. Your name's on it." That last part hit hard because it was true. I thanked him and hung up. My hands were sweating. I searched for a family law attorney back in Toledo. Someone local, someone who understood Ohio courts and didn't talk like a robot. Earl had mentioned a name once, and after a few calls, I got an appointment with Kendra Holt. Kendra met me by video call. She was in her 40s, short hair, reading glasses, no nonsense. Behind her, I could see framed certificates and a photo of her standing with a golden retriever that looked happier than anyone in my marriage. "Mr. Hargrove," she said, "tell me what's going on. Start from the BBQ if you need to." So I did. I told her everything, and the more I spoke, the more I heard how ridiculous it sounded, like I was describing someone else's life. When I finished, Kendra nodded once. "Okay," she said, "here's the simple version." I leaned closer to the screen. "If your wife is using your identity, your income history, or forged documents to secure financing, she said you're at risk. Not because you did it, but because you're connected. If the lender believes you authorized it, or if your silence allows it to proceed, your name could be tangled in the mess." I didn't sign anything, I said. "I understand," Kendra replied, "but we have to prove that. And you have to act like a man who's protecting himself, not like a man trying to be nice." That stung because it was true. I built my whole adult life around being the nice man, the reliable man, the man who keeps the peace. Kendra continued, "We can do a few things quickly. 1, we separate finances formally. 2, we document everything, every alert, every email, every conversation. 3, we send notice to the lender if necessary. But," she paused, "there's a strategy decision here." "What decision?" I asked, though I already felt it coming. "Sometimes," she said, "the cleanest, most satisfying outcome is letting someone keep walking while they're certain they're right until the truth catches up to them in a room full of witnesses." My mouth went dry. Kendra held my gaze through the camera. "I'm not telling you to set a trap. I'm telling you to stop rescuing someone who's actively throwing you under the bus." For a moment, I couldn't respond, because my mind jumped backward, not to Sharon's cruelty, but to the softer parts, her laugh 20 years ago, in a diner booth, the way she held my arm at my mother's funeral, the nights we sat on the couch, watching old movies like Life Was Simple. Then I remembered the look on her face at that BBQ, the contempt, the certainty that I'd always swallow it. I looked down at my hands. They were steady now. I don't want to destroy her, I said quietly. Kendra's voice softened a fraction. Then don't, but do not let her destroy you. After the call, I opened a blank email addressed to the lender contact Marissa had mentioned. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could write 2 sentences and shut the whole thing down. I typed the first line. Then I stopped. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. In the end, I saved it as a draft. Not sent, not yet. Because something in me, something older than fear, wanted Sharon to stand in her own choices. Fully, publicly. With the same confidence she'd had when she told me I'd come crawling back. I closed the laptop, took a slow breath, and made myself a promise. I would be calm, I would be legal, I would be ready. And I would let the rope play out just long enough for the truth to tighten on its own. I told myself that unsent email was a safety net, not a weapon. But once you decide to stop rescuing someone, you start noticing how often you've been doing it. Sharon texted the next morning like nothing had happened. Morning, babe. Did you get the paperwork? Just sign it when it comes. I'm busy today. Outside my Berlin window, the sky was slate gray. A bus hissed at the corner. I stared at her message until my coffee went cold, then typed back, "What paperwork?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then her reply landed like a slap. "Don't start, Frank. It's just for the business. You said you wanted me to do something with my life." I didn't answer. I opened a folder on my laptop, instead screenshots, bank alerts, the compliance email, Marissa's contact, Kendra's notes. I named it the way I name work projects, Hargrove documents. It felt wrong putting my marriage in a file. It also felt necessary. On my lunch break, I called Earl Donnelly back in Toledo. The familiar rattle of his old Ford came through the phone. "I can drive by your place after work," he said. "Just look," I told him. "No knocking, no drama." 2 hours later, Earl texted me a photo of my driveway. My Jeep sat there, like it always did, next to a silver SUV I didn't recognize. Then another picture, lights on, inside my house, curtains open, like Sharon wanted the street to watch her win. Sharon called that night, voice only. "Why aren't you answering?" she demanded. "I'm working," I said. "You're always working," she snapped. "Meanwhile, I'm doing everything here." "What is everything?" I asked, calm on purpose. A pause. "Starting something real," she said. "And you're acting like my enemy." "I got a compliance email," I told her. "They want me to verify signatures tied to our address." Silence, thick, suspicious. "That's standard," she said finally. "Too fast, too smooth." "Did you sign my name?" I asked. "You're being dramatic," she said. "I'm your wife. We share everything." "We don't share my signature," I said. Her tone went sweet, the way it does right before she turns the knife. "Frank," she said softly, "don't do this from over there. Don't make me the bad guy." "I didn't," I said. "You did." The line went dead. After that, sleep became a series of short defeats. 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I'd wake up with my heart hammering like I'd missed a shipment deadline. At work, I fixed port issues and customs holds while my mind kept replaying Sharon's smirk at the BBQ. Rick Lawson noticed first. "You look like you've been living on airport coffee and bad decisions," he said. "Close," I muttered. I told him about the forged signature question and the bank alerts. Rick didn't blink. "She's running your name like a credit card," he said. "Stop letting her." That afternoon, I had another call with Kendra Holt. No fluff, no sympathy, just steps. "We separate finances legally," she said. "New accounts. Move your deposit. Put dual authorization notes on the joint account. Document everything. And you do not argue with her on the phone." "She'll explode," I said. Kendra's eyes stayed steady. "Let her. Anger isn't evidence. Records are." I did exactly what Kendra said. It felt like tightening bolts on a machine you didn't want to admit was failing. Sharon's texts started coming in waves. "So this is what you're doing, controlling me from Europe." Then I knew you'd turn on me. Men always do when women try to succeed. And later, softer, almost convincing. "Frank, please. The house feels empty without you." That one punched me right in the chest because it sounded like the Sharon I used to know. Then I remembered the loan application, the forged signature, the strangers in my driveway. Empty wasn't what she feared. Losing control was. By Friday morning, my body was done pretending. My blood pressure was high enough that a clinic nurse told me kindly that stress wasn't a hobby. On the walk back, the city smelled like wet stone and cigarette smoke. I passed a bakery window glowing warm with bread I couldn't pronounce, and it hit me how far I'd traveled just to feel respected. Back in Toledo, respect used to be simple: show up, do your job, pay your bills, shake a man's hand, and mean it. Somewhere along the way, I'd started accepting less at home than I'd ever accept from a stranger at work. In my apartment, I sat at the little table and stared at my wedding ring. It had always felt like a promise. Now it felt like a reminder of how long I'd been quiet. I didn't take it off. Not yet. I just pressed my thumb against it until the metal warmed, and I told myself the same thing I tell new hires when a shipment goes missing: don't guess, don't panic, follow the trail. I walked back to my apartment with my jaw clenched and my hands finally steady, not from calm, but from decision. I called Earl again. "How bad is it?" I asked. Earl exhaled. "She put a sign in the yard," he said. "Plastic stake, like real estate." "What kind of sign?" "Grand opening," Earl said. "Sharon Hargrove Imports, Saturday night, Community Hall on Monroe Street." My stomach dropped. "She's using our last name for a business." "Worse," Earl said. "It says sponsored by Franklin Hargrove's Legacy and Connections." Sponsored, Legacy, Connections. Like my whole life was a prop she could wheel out for applause. I heard Kendra's voice in my head. "Sometimes the truth needs witnesses." "I'm coming home," I said. Earl didn't cheer. He just said, "You want me nearby?" "Yeah," I said, "but I'm not looking for a fight." Earl's voice softened. "You never were." That night I booked a flight Berlin to Detroit to Toledo Express. I packed light documents, one clean shirt, my laptop, and a tired kind of resolve. Before I left for the airport, I stood in that Berlin quiet one last time. The refrigerator hummed the distant train, and I sent Sharon a single message. "I'll be in Toledo Saturday." No threat, no plea, just a timestamp. If Sharon wanted a room full of witnesses, I was finally ready to give her one. The first thing that hit me when I walked off the plane in Toledo wasn't the cold. It was the smell. Jet fuel and winter air. Even though it was only early June, Toledo has a way of turning damp evenings into something that feels like late fall. It smelled like home, like asphalt and coffee and the Maumee River on a windy day. I didn't go to the house first. That was Kendra's instruction. "Don't give her a private scene," she'd said. "If she wants to spin a story, don't let her do it behind closed doors. You're walking into a trap if you go home alone." So I checked into a Holiday Inn near the airport, the kind with beige carpet and an ice machine that never sounds healthy, and I met Kendra Holt in the lobby. She was exactly as she'd been on video: sharp eyes, tidy suit, no patience for nonsense. She slid into the booth across from me with a legal pad and a pen. "You look like hell," she said, not unkindly. "I feel like hell," I admitted. "Good," she said. "Means you're awake." She went through the plan again, clear and simple. "You're going to that event," she said. "You will not speak until I tell you. You will not argue. You will not raise your voice. Sharon's going to bait you. She'll want you to look emotional. Don't give her that." I nodded. Kendra tapped her pen. "You brought everything." I slid a folder across the table bank: alerts, screenshots, compliance email, Marissa's verification, and a printout of the loan application summaries Kendra had subpoenaed through proper channels. No stealing, no hacking, just paperwork the way responsible adults fight. Kendra flipped through it like she was sorting receipts after a tax audit. "This is solid," she said. "And the best part is none of it is opinion, it's facts." I swallowed. What if she cries, I asked, and I hated myself for it. Kendra's eyes narrowed. "Frank," she said, "if she cries because she got caught, that's not your job to fix." Saturday night, I drove past my house. I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself it would only stir up my blood pressure. But the streets felt familiar. Reynolds Road, the old diner, signs, the same cracked sidewalks, and my hands turned the wheel without asking permission. My front yard looked staged. There was a sign on a plastic stake, like Earl said: Sharon Hargrove Imports. Grand opening tonight. Under it, in smaller letters, sponsored by Franklin Hargrove's Legacy and Connections. My legacy? Like my 35 years of clean work and quiet responsibility, were a brand she could slap on a banner. A car I didn't recognize sat in my driveway. Another parked crooked along the curb. Through the window, I saw movement people inside my living room laughing. I kept driving. Not because I was afraid. Because Kendra was right. The private scene was where Sharon would win. She'd cry, she'd blame, she'd twist. and I'd be standing there exhausted trying to explain myself like a teenager caught past curfew. Instead, I turned toward Monroe Street. The Toledo Community Hall was the kind of place you'd been to 100 times if you grew up around here. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, a stage that had seen retirement parties and church bazaars, and a parking lot full of sensible cars. When I pulled in, I sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. I listened to my own breathing. I tasted stale airplane coffee in the back of my throat. You'll come crawling back. I wasn't crawling, but I was shaking. Not from fear, more like the body's last protest before the mind takes over. Earl's truck pulled in beside me. He climbed out slow, like a man walking into weather. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," I said. He looked at my face. "You want me close?" "Just nearby," I said. "If I start doing something stupid, remind me I'm 58. Earl gave a small smile. "I'll remind you you're 60, he corrected. Inside the hall, the smell hit me, first cheap perfume coffee in big metal urns and potluck casseroles. Somebody had set out cheese cubes and crackers on a folding table. A banner hung over the stage with Sharon's business name in bold letters. Sharon was up front dressed like she was running for office. Hair curled, dress fitted, smile bright enough to blind you. She was holding court, laughing, touching elbows, making people feel like she was doing them a favor by letting them stand near her. I spotted a few faces I recognized. Neighbors, a couple folks from church, someone's cousin who always worked the room, and my stomach tightened, 2 men I knew from my industry. Guys I'd dealt with on shipping bids, men who'd trust my word on a contract because I'd never lied to them. She'd invited them, used my name like bait. Kendra met me near the back, calm as a judge. She wore a navy suit and carried a plain folder like she was heading into a meeting, not a public showdown. "Remember," she said softly, "we're not here to humiliate her. We're here to stop the damage and tell the truth." I nodded, though part of me wanted humiliation. I won't pretend I was above it. Sharon had been humiliating me for years in small ways. Little laughs, little cuts. Tonight, everyone would see the pattern I'd been swallowing alone. Sharon stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. "Hi, everyone," she said, voice bright. "Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It means the world to me." Polite applause. She smiled wider. "Some of you know the past year's been hard. I won't get into details, but sometimes life forces you to reinvent yourself." Another round of applause. I could already feel her building the story, Sharon the victim, Sharon the fighter. She glanced toward the back of the room like she was searching for someone. Me. When her eyes landed on mine, her smile flickered for half a second, just a crack. Then she recovered fast. Tonight, she continued, is about new beginnings, about courage, about not letting anyone tell you what you can't do. The crowd clapped again louder. The 2 industry guys nodded along like she was inspiring. Sharon leaned into the microphone, voice dropping into something almost tender. "And I have to thank my husband, Frank," she said. "Even though he chose a different path, his legacy and connections have inspired me to build something of my own." There it was, the lie wrapped in a compliment. My hands clenched. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. Earl shifted beside me just enough to ground me. Kendra took one slow step forward. Sharon lifted her glass. "To reinvention," she said. Applause rose, people smiled, someone whistled. And in the middle of that applause, Kendra's voice cut through, not loud, not angry, just clear. "Mrs. Hargrove," she said, "I'm Kendra Holt, attorney for Mr. Franklin Hargrove." The room didn't go silent immediately. At first, people thought it was part of the program. Then Sharon's face tightened. Kendra walked to the front table and placed her folder down with a soft thud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. The sound of paper on plastic carried in that hall like a warning. "Before you continue," Kendra said, "we need to address a matter of documentation you submitted to secure a business loan." The applause died in pieces. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Sharon let out a laugh that didn't match her eyes. "This is not the time," she said, still smiling, still trying. Kendra stayed steady. "It's exactly the time," she replied, "because you've been using Mr. Hargrove's identity and income history without authorization." A murmur ran through the room like wind through dry leaves. Sharon's eyes darted to me again, sharp, furious, scared. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then she found her voice low and venomous. "Frank," she hissed, not into the microphone, just into the air between us. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just watched the truth stand up in front of witnesses. Sharon's first instinct wasn't to apologize. It was to perform. She stepped off the stage with that same bright smile, moving toward Kendra like she was greeting an old friend at church. The crowd leaned in. You could hear the little sounds people make when they're uncomfortable, throats clearing paper plates, shifting a chair leg, squeaking on the tile. "Oh my goodness," Sharon said, laughing too high. "Kendra, right? This is all some misunderstanding." Kendra didn't smile back. She just opened the folder. "Mrs. Hargrove," she said, calm as a bank teller, "I'm going to keep this simple." She laid out 3 sets of papers on the front table, like she was setting down cards in a game nobody wanted to play. One, she said, tapping the first stack, the loan application you submitted for Sharon Hargrove Imports dated May 28th. 2, she continued tapping the second, the attached power of attorney authorization, purporting to give you signing authority for Mr. Hargrove. And 3, she said, tapping the last, the lender's fraud flag and signature comparison report. The room got quieter. Not silent quiet in that way a room gets when people realize they might have to remember what they're hearing. Sharon's smile started slipping at the corners. "You can't do this," she whispered, and now her voice had dropped low enough that it wasn't for the crowd anymore. It was for me. I took a step forward, not aggressive, just present. I wanted her to see that I wasn't hiding behind my lawyer. I was standing on my own 2 feet. "Frank," she said, eyes wide, "are you seriously trying to ruin me in front of everybody?" I looked around at the faces watching, neighbors, church folks, 2 industry guys who'd trusted my word. Earl stood off to the side, arms crossed like a man guarding a line in the sand. "I didn't invite everyone here," I said quietly. "You did." Sharon's eyes flashed. "Because you left me," she snapped. "You ran off to Europe like some old man with a passport," I finished for her. A few people shifted. A woman near the back put a hand over her mouth. The 2 industry guys stopped nodding. They were watching now, different. Kendra spoke again, clear and steady. "Mrs. Hargrove, did Mr. Hargrove authorize you to use his income history to secure this loan?" Sharon looked at the crowd like she was searching for someone to rescue her. "We're married," she said, as if that explained everything. "That's our money." "That's not how authorization works," Kendra replied. Sharon's voice rose. "He was supposed to support me." I felt something in my chest loosen, not because it hurt less, but because it finally made sense. Sharon didn't see marriage as partnership. She saw it as entitlement. Kendra turned one page and read, not theatrically, just plainly. "This application states Mr. Hargrove will be actively involved in operational logistics and procurement," she said. "It also states he has granted signing authority through power of attorney." Sharon's face went pale. Kendra looked up. "Mr. Hargrove has confirmed he did not grant power of attorney. He has also confirmed he did not sign these documents." Sharon's head snapped toward me. Her eyes were glossy now, but it wasn't sorrow. It was rage mixed with panic. "You're doing this because you're angry," she hissed. "Because I made a joke." I let out a slow breath. The hall smelled like coffee and cheap perfume, and for a second I could hear the BBQ again, the burgers sizzling, the neighbor's laugh dying halfway. Sharon's words sharp as glass, "You'll come crawling back." "I'm doing this because you lied," I said, "and because you used my name." Sharon's voice cracked. "So you're just going to let me fail?" Kendra answered before I could. "No one is letting you do anything, Mrs. Hargrove. You made the filings. You chose to attach forged authority." The word forged landed hard. A murmur rolled through the room. Sharon spun to the crowd, hands raised like a politician caught in a scandal. "This is ridiculous," she said loudly. "Frank is confused. He's stressed. He's been overseas and he's not thinking straight." That one stung because it wasn't just a lie. It was the story she'd been telling for years. Frank's dependable. Frank's old Frank's not quite there. The industry guy I knew, Tom Caldwell. Gray hair, clean jacket, tilted his head studying her. The other one, Nate Pierce, frowned like he'd bitten into something sour. Kendra leaned in slightly, voice still calm. "Mrs. Hargrove, the lender's report flags your submission because the signature does not match Mr. Hargrove's known signature specimen. Mr. Hargrove's employer compliance department also requested verification because these documents triggered a disclosure issue tied to his position." Sharon's mouth opened, then closed, because now she realized she hadn't just played with my marriage. She'd played with my job. And my job was the one place I'd never been weak. Sharon stepped toward me, and for the first time all night her voice dropped into something softer, almost pleading. "Frank," she said, "please, don't do this here. Not in front of them." The room held its breath. She reached for my arm and I flinched before I could stop myself. Not because she'd hurt me physically, but because I suddenly felt how many times I'd been grabbed, emotionally pulled back into line with a smile and a guilt trip. Sharon's eyes filled. She whispered, "You'll come crawling back. You always do." There it was again, not a threat this time, a belief. I looked at her, really looked. Her makeup was flawless, but her hands were shaking. Her smile was gone. All that confidence she wore like a coat was slipping off her shoulders. I could have said something cruel. I could have stood there and enjoyed it. Instead, I heard my own voice come out steady, almost sad. I crawled back once I said, "For us." I apologized for things I didn't do just to keep the peace. Sharon's lips trembled. "Frank." "Not anymore," I said. Kendra stepped forward with a single sheet of paper. "Mrs. Hargrove," she said, "this is formal notice that Mr. Hargrove does not authorize any financial activity, business filings, or loan applications in his name or tied to his income. This notice will be provided to the lender and relevant parties." Sharon grabbed at the air like she could snatch the paper away. "You can't," she whispered. Kendra didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "We can, and we have." The room was so quiet now I could hear the building's air conditioning kick on. Sharon turned, eyes darting from face to face. People she'd been smiling at 10 minutes earlier were suddenly busy looking at their shoes or their cups. The woman who'd brought the casserole stared down like she'd never seen it before. Sharon's chin lifted, trying to regain control. "Fine," she snapped. "Fine. If you want to embarrass me, go ahead. But don't think you'll get away with this." Her voice rose again, sharp and bright. "Everyone here should know Frank is doing this out of spite. He left me. He abandoned me. And now he's coming back to punish me." I waited a beat, then spoke, not loud, just clear. "I didn't come back to punish you," I said. "I came back to tell the truth, and to keep my name clean." Tom Caldwell shook his head slowly, almost disappointed. Nate Pierce's face went hard. The two of them stepped back from Sharon like distance could protect them from being associated with her. That's the thing about a public room. You can't control what people see once the lights are on. Sharon swallowed, eyes shining, and for the first time I saw fear in her, real fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing the story she'd built where she was always right. I didn't stay to watch it crumble any further. Kendra gathered her papers, calm as ever. Earl moved to my side, quiet support without words. As we walked toward the exit, Sharon's voice followed me, strained and desperate. "You'll regret this," she called. "You'll come back, you'll—" I stopped at the door. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The cool air from outside touched my face. I turned just enough for her to see me. "Sharon," I said, gentle but firm, "the only thing I regret is waiting this long to stand up." Then I walked out. The parking lot was dark and damp. My breath came out in a white puff. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. Life kept moving like it always does. Earl looked at me as we reached his truck. "You okay?" I took a long breath and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Space. "Yeah," I said, voice rough. "I think I am."